some interesting things about breathing. And the title of my message is Breathe. Because, like I said before, we all know that we all breathe, but when is the last time you really taken the time to breathe? So, some interesting facts. All of us, on average, breathe 26,000 times a day. That's 14,000 liters of air that we're moving within our body. Now, we're supposed to breathe from our stomach, but most of us breathe from our chest. Because when we're anxious, when we're stressed, when we're moving too fast, we don't take the time to breathe from our stomachs. We just breathe from our chests. The average person breathes 16 to 20 times a minute. But that's not the optimal amount of breaths to breathe a minute. Because the Boston School of Medicine, they did a study. And they said if you want to prolong your life, that needs to be to less than 10 breaths a minute. The optimal, even better if you can get it to 4 to 6 breaths a minute. We have anybody here ever heard of what box breathing or what box breathing is? Anybody? All right, we got a picture, Randy, if we can show it. So this is box breathing. Now, this is what they teach Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, people that are going through stressful situations, firefighters, first responders that are going into police officers, LEs that are going into dangerous situations. And they teach them this so that they can calm their breathing down, calm the anxiety, and actually decrease their heart rate. And what this is, box breathing, is you breathe in for 4 seconds, then you hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold for 4 seconds. And if you do this a certain number of times, they found that even just doing it once can help, but if you do this for a certain amount of time, depending on the situation, you will eventually start to lower your beats per minute of your heart and your breaths per minute. In fact, they found that it just you sitting there and paying attention to your breathing, you will start to slow your breathing down. But when's the last time that we've actually paid attention to our breathing? We are born belly breathers. Anybody ever watched a baby breathing and their belly goes up and down? Sometimes you can't even see their chest rise and fall. We are born belly breathers, but after a while, the stress of life and just moving so quickly and all of this stuff going on, we forget to breathe from our bellies and we breathe just from our chest. Experts say that 99% of our energy that we have should come from breathing, but most of us only tap in to around 10 to 20% of that energy. Our lungs are the biggest waste removal machine in our body. Our lungs are created to rid our body of carbon dioxide. But most of the time, we don't even use our lungs for the full capacity. And if we just breathe from our chest, our lungs are not able to remove that waste from it. And it removes, our lungs are supposed to move 70%, get rid of 70% of the carbon dioxide in our body. But with everything going on in our lives, anybody here, is it just me? Anybody else here have stuff going on in your lives? In your life? Anybody? Anybody here that's just like, yep, nothing's going on. Yep, I have no idea what I'm doing after this. Actually, I was going to ask you if it's okay if I could just sit here for 5 to 6 hours. No, we all got stuff going on. I mean, who actually sits there and thinks of their breathing? Now, we say like breathing oxygen a lot of times. That's the phrase we use, but I don't feel like that's really accurate, because when we breathe in air, there's only a percentage of it that is oxygen. Anybody know what the percentage of the air we breathe in is oxygen? 21%. What we breathe in is 79% nitrogen. Now, the air that we actually inhale, we only inhale about 16% oxygen, 4% carbon dioxide, and then the 79% nitrogen. Now, how many of you guys have ever tried to hold your breath? And just to see how long you could hold your breath. Anybody? All right. What do you think the average time is that someone is able to hold their breath? 40 seconds. I got that. Did somebody say 30 minutes? 30 seconds? A minute and a half? All right. So, the average person at max, the average person can hold their breath for 1 to 2 minutes. Now, there's this dude. His name is Stig. Crazy name, right? Stig Severinsen. He's from Denmark. In 2010, he broke the world record for the longest holding his breath underwater. Check this out. We got a picture of him. We got a picture. Nope, not that one. The other one. That one, yeah. Yeah, that's him. That's Stig. He held his breath for 20 minutes and 10 seconds. 22 minutes. That's the record. 22 minutes. He has swam under ice water for 20 minutes. That's the other picture. You can go to that, Randy. Swimming under ice water. And then, I'm not sure if I have a picture of it or not. He also, this is a crazy thing. I'm not sure why he did this, but also in 2010, he held his breath underwater for 20 minutes and 10 seconds in a tank filled with sharks. Filled with sharks. Now, it shows the power of breathing and the different techniques of that. Now, when we breathe faster, how many of you have ever started to hyperventilate? You just started breathing really fast. Anybody? You got really stress, anxiety, or anything? All right. Now, there's when we breathe faster and we just breathe from our chest, it produces a hormone in our body. It produces a chemical in our body called cortisol. Now, cortisol is considered the stress hormone. There's a reason for it. It's the chemical that produces the fight or flight within our body. Like when we're in danger, it's like I'm getting out of here or I'm ready to fight. That's what that chemical does. This chemical actually produces. How many's ever heard those stories where, like, say a kid gets trapped under a car and the mom gets like the superhuman strength and is able to pick up that car and move it? Yeah, that really can happen because it's that chemical cortisol that will give you that extra strength for that moment, because that's why it was created. When we're in danger, when those situations come, it gives us that little extra that we need for that. So when we breathe faster, it produces that. Now, here's the thing with cortisol. It's only intended to stay in your body for a few minutes. But a lot of times what happens is cortisol is never released from our body and it just stays in our body because we stay at a place of stress or a place of anxiety or a place of just never stopping and just moving from thing to thing to thing. And because we can't stop that stuff from going on. So then the result of that is switching to some kind of substance abuse or switching to something just to try to turn that off. And by the way, I just want to say this. Busyness is a drug that a lot of us can suffer with. If I just stay busy, if I just stay moving, I won't have to think of this, I won't have to think of that, but we're never getting rid of that chemical that's produced in our body. Now, so if we breathe faster, the faster we breathe, the more cortisol goes on in our body. If we don't breathe, then we have a lack of oxygen, and then what happens? You don't breathe long enough, like you die, right? And even if you start breathing again, like if you don't breathe, if you don't have enough oxygen that gets to your brain, after a while, it will start to kill brain cells, which may explain why this dude jumped in a tank with sharks. Just saying. Now, you may be asking this question. I'm pretty sure Pam is. My mother-in-law, Pam, too. You're not the only one named Pam, okay? Yeah. Pams need to get together. You may be asking, like, why is Jimmy talking about this? Like breathing. Maybe like, I like the song and stuff, but I don't really know why. Well, there's a reason behind it, because I want us to pay attention to what that breath really is, or what it represents. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. Now, this is the beginning of man. God creates this dude named Adam. And Genesis 2:7 says this. It says, "Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground." Now, when you look at this Lord, I want you to make note that how it's spelled, and it's spelled like this in most translations: capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. I'll explain that here in a minute. God formed man from the dust of the ground. So he formed him. He made him. And breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. Now, what I gather from this part, this scripture, is that God, when he made Adam, he built him, put him together using dust. So he's here, this dirt clog. He's here, this piece of clay. But he's not activated yet. He's just standing there, kind of like one of those ceramic figurines or something. But then this verse says that God did something very unique. God breathed into the nostrils of man. And at that moment, ladies and gentlemen, we had the first ever human being. And at that moment, Adam came to life. But it was not until God breathed into his nostrils, breathed that breath. Now, the ancient Jewish people, ancient Hebrews, they believed, and actually still do, that the breath that we breathe right now, the breath that I have inside of me and that you have inside of you, is in fact the borrowed breath of God. And each and every one of us, when we are breathing the breath of God. And we continue to breathe that borrowed breath of God until we no longer breathe, until we die, and then that borrowed breath is returned. Now, there's a reason that they spell it in most translations, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. Believe it or not, the original Bible was not written in English. I know, shocking. To the Old Testament, this was written in Hebrew. Now, in the Hebrew name for God, we pronounce it Yahweh. And we kind of write it how it's spelled. But it was actually, the name of God was this: capital Y, capital H, capital V, capital H. Now, the ancient Hebrews, Jewish people, and some still believe this, that they were not holy enough, or they were not righteous enough to actually pronounce the name of God. Anybody ever seen anybody spell God, capital G, dash, capital D? I haven't seen it until recently, and I've gotten some emails and texts. I've seen it in different ways because it's like they don't even want to write God, or they won't say it because it's like we're not righteous enough to say it. Well, here's the thing with this. Can anybody pronounce this for me in Hebrew? Now, in Hebrew, there's no vowels. So here's the thing. It wasn't even that they felt like they shouldn't say it. They kind of couldn't say it because they didn't know really how to pronounce it. Some say it was even it's unpronounceable. And I was interested in this a couple of years ago, and I started looking into it. And when you actually pronounce this in Hebrew, it sounds like this: Yod, He, Wah, He. Yod, He, Wah, He. Because you have to, there's about, so you have to give it that. And when I was researching this, there are many that believe that how to actually pronounce the name of God is through breath sounds, is by breathing. That when each and every one of us take a breath, what we are actually doing is we are pronouncing the name of God. It's like God, when he built us and put us together, and he gave us that borrowed breath, that when we breathe that borrowed breath, we actually declare his glory. We actually declare that he is Lord. We actually declare his name. And how many of you guys know somebody right now? You have a friend, a family member, you know somebody, and they are dead set on there is no God. How many? Anybody know anybody like that? Well, you're going to love this. Somebody can be saying with their voice, I do not believe in God. But as they're saying that, and as they're breathing, they're saying, as they are saying there is no God, in fact, their breath that they are using to say that is declaring the glory of that very God they're saying they don't believe in. Our very breath declares his name. Now, I'm going to ask this. How many of you guys at some time, maybe it's right now, but at some time in your life you felt or you feel right now that you are far from God? Just me. Okay. A few of you. You're like, maybe you've been like, I don't feel his presence. I don't know what everybody's getting all worked up about that song. I call on him, nothing. In fact, maybe you are here today and you've already thought at some point today, I don't even know why I'm here because I don't even really believe in this. Now, if you are in that place where you are saying that you feel far from God or you have felt far from God, I want you to take comfort in this. You are not alone. For there are many great men and women of God that have felt like that before. In fact, there's some of them in the Bible, and we're going to talk about that. So the first one we're going to talk about, we're going to find in Genesis chapter 28, verse 16. Now, it's this dude, his name is Jacob. Now, Jacob, he falls asleep, and he has a dream. How many of you guys have how many of you guys, you have like really vivid dreams? Anybody? How many of you are like, I do not dream? Okay, a few of you. Okay. Well, Jacob, he has this dream, and in this dream, he sees like this stairway, this ladder that comes down from the heavens with angels on it, and then he wakes up. Now, some of you may be like, oh, man, I want to have that dream. Some of you may be like, I'm glad I didn't have that dream. But Jacob has that, and then this is what he says in Genesis 28:16. It says, then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, without a doubt, the Lord is in this place, and I did not realize it. So many times we get so worked up, so many times we are so busy that we don't even notice the work that God's doing in our lives. Sometimes we get so focused on those things that are negative and those things that have gone wrong or not have gone how we did not plan, and we think God doesn't care, or maybe think God just must not exist. But in fact, he was there the entire time. Now, here's the cool thing. 500 years later, all right, how many of you remember what happened 500 years ago? Pastor Rocky? 500 years later, there's the shepherd. His name is Moses. Now, Moses, he ran from Egypt because he killed a dude, all right? He's in hiding. He comes upon these ladies. He fancies one of them. He goes to the dad. The dad's name is Jethro. Any Jethros here right now? No. All right. He goes to Jethro. They agree that he's going to marry one of these ladies. All right. So he's all excited. Moses is watching his father-in-law's sheep, and he sees something that happens. It's very odd. He sees a bush that is on fire. But it's not the bush on fire that's the strange thing. Because here he is in the hot desert. Let me ask you something. If I don't know how many tree experts we have here. I'm assuming quite a few. A couple hundred at least. And when it gets really dry, the tree dries up. And then it gets hot out. And as the sun hits that tree, it gets so hot that it catches on fire. Probably an occurrence that happened often in this area of Horeb. So that's not the unusual part. Let's figure out what the unusual part is. All right. Exodus chapter 3, starting with verse 2. It says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him, talking about Moses, in a blazing flame of fire from the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was on fire. Yet it was not consumed. If we had a dry bush here, just any size bush, I don't know Brian, what's the average size bush you think? Just an average bush. 2 foot. Your average bush is 2 foot. All right. Not much of a green thumb here, but average bush. Say someone said 4. Say you got a 4-foot bush. A bush that's all dried up, no leaves on it. Okay, it's hot, and it catches on fire. How long do you think it would take for that bush to be totally consumed? You said 8 seconds. So we got anybody else say anything? 2 minutes. Somebody said 2 minutes. Anybody else? 1 minute. 3 minutes. Okay. As long as I heard it's 3 minutes. So I'm going to give you all the benefit of the doubt. We'll say it takes 3 minutes to totally consume that bush. So Moses had to be watching this for at least for him to recognize that it had to be burning like for longer than 3 minutes, right? He had to recognize that. It wasn't like, I'm sure he sees burning bushes all the time, but this one's unusual. He had to recognize this burning bush. There's probably other burning bushes that he's walked past, didn't pay attention to. This one's been burning. For him to know there's something odd that hasn't been consumed for a while, for him to really take notice and for him to get interested, it had to say at least be on fire for 3 minutes. All right? So at the very least, God was there for 3 minutes before Moses noticed that. You notice it wasn't consumed. So Moses said, I must turn away and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, when the Lord saw that he turned away to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then God said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, because the place on which you are standing is holy ground. So my question to you is, how many burning bushes do we have all around us that we haven't taken time to notice? How many times, how many blessings do we have that we have not thanked God for? How many things have happened in our life that we've just kind of just taken for granted? And then say, God, where are you, without paying attention to the burning bushes that are around us? And here's the thing. Moses has been a shepherd for his father-in-law for some time now. This is not a foreign land. He has walked through this and on Mount Horeb quite a bit. And I am going to suggest to you that that ground that Moses was walking on was holy ground this entire time. But he just didn't take time to notice it. For right now, my friends, right now, my family, that very place that you're standing, it is holy ground, whether you know it or not. And the reason that you're able to stand in that ground is because the very breath that you are breathing is the borrowed breath of God. Now, this is the interesting thing too. If you're like, the interesting thing, but just a side note about Mount Horeb, it had a different name. It had another name. Anybody know what that other name was? It was also called Mount Sinai. Anybody know something very important happened at Mount Sinai a little later to the same Moses? Yep, he has retired from shepherding animals. Now he has shifted the people. The Ten Commandments. Same mountain. Same place. Holy this whole time. Now here's my question as I'm closing, and Heath, you can come up. If you do believe that that very breath, if you're like, hey, there's a possibility, that very breath that I'm breathing right now is the borrowed breath of God. And I'm just going to say this. We just read in Genesis that what Adam had God breathed into his nostrils, and he now is breathing the breath of God. If that's how Adam was created, and he was breathing the breath of God, why would we think that we're not breathing the borrowed breath of God? So here's the thing. If in fact that very breath that you are breathing is the borrowed breath of God, this is my question for you. How have you been representing that breath of God? Because I'm just going to say this, if you're breathing the borrowed breath of God, that means everybody that's around you is also breathing that borrowed breath of God. That means people that you don't agree with. That means people that have different beliefs, people that have different ideas, people that live in other areas. Because here's the thing. We may share different, we may have different things, and there's different, but we all have things that we share, and one is the air that's in this world. We're all breathing that. We all, if we are living, we have that breath. how do you represent that breath? Now, but Jimmy, you don't know like what they said to me. You don't know like, man, all the things that you can pull it up online and see all the things that they've done. No. How do you represent that breath of God? Do you represent it with love? Or is there hate coming from that breath that's borrowed from God? Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. You can't use your tongue if you aren't breathing. Death and life is in the power of that breath, that borrowed breath of God. Check this out. If the word breath in Hebrew, in the original Hebrew, is ruach. In the Old Testament, it's originally written in Greek. The word for breath in Greek is pneuma. There's another word that is used that's the same. Ruach and pneuma, it's spirit. Breath and spirit, interchangeable. Same words throughout the scriptures. That spirit that's flowing through you, how are you using it? You say, well, Jimmy, I don't know. Like, okay, you got me on that I'm breathing the borrowed breath of God. I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm in church right now, and it's here at Farallon. So, but how about people that don't believe in God? Or how about the people that have used the name of God to hurt other people? Or how about there's some people that have done some despicable things, and I will agree with you on that. But yet they are still breathing that same borrowed breath of God. What God has called us to do is to love those people. Now, for some you may say it's impossible, and I'll agree with you because it is. Without Jesus' help, you cannot. I found something interesting with Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. So I decided to look up stuff. And I'm just can I say this? That I didn't write this message. I actually put it down and write it until 3 this morning because I was planning on speaking on something else. I've been really wanting to start this 3-week series, and I was planning on doing it for the next 3 weeks. Now I got to figure out how to do that series in 2 weeks. But the Lord just kept dealing with me with this. But this morning I decided to look up something. And how the breath can affect our bodies. And there's so many ways, I don't have the time to do it, but one, if people that they have to breathe through their mouth, and there's people that just their whole life they've never like taken the time to breathe the proper way, or if they have something that's obstructing that. Being a mouth breather, like where you just breathe in and out through your mouth, it actually can age you. For every year, ages you a year and a half. If you continue to do that, it can age you, your organs, age even the way that you look. Now, so if the power of the tongue, if death and life is in the power of the tongue, I decided to look up what happens to us if we speak negatively about others. I'm not just saying to others, all right? Because you guys might be like, yeah, I spoke negative to this one dude one time, and then I ended up with a fat lip. I'm not talking about that. All right, I would just in general, like negative talk, negative about this is what's going on, or that's going. And by the way, negativity can be addicting. Negativity can be something. It can be a habit that we pick up on so easily. But this is what happens when we speak negatively, because it does something not just to us. When we speak negatively about other people, it does something. It does something to them if they find out about it, but it does something to us even if they never do. And this is interesting. When we speak negatively, it lowers our ability to see opportunities that come into our lives. We speak negative about ourselves, negative about other people. It lowers the ability to see those opportunities. then it decreases the tendency to capitalize on the opportunities that you do see. So you're missing all these other opportunities because you're failing to see it because you're negative about so much stuff. And then the ones that you do recognize, you don't have the tendency to capitalize on it. When we're negative for so long, it starts to create neural pathways in our brain that encourages sadness. Right now, we may get to talk. If I go out of here and I talk about so-and-so and what they've done, I may, for that moment, produce that little bit of dopamine in me because I got somebody's attention. But what it also does, it produces sadness within myself. And then it sends our body into stress. Because when we speak negatively, it produces that same chemical of cortisol. It releases that in the bloodstream, which is good. If you are about to be attacked by a fighting kangaroo, it's good to have that cortisol for that moment. But after you run from that kangaroo or you beat it in a fist fight, that threat's gone, that cortisol leaves. But when we speak negatively, it enters our body into a place of stress where that cortisol is released in our bloodstream. And as long as we continue to be negative, it continues to get released and continues to stay there. And then it produces more and more sadness. Now check this out. It slows digestion, and it drastically changes our metabolism. So if you continue to be negative, and you're like, I'm going to go on a diet. Just a diet plan. You don't got to stop what you're eating. Eat all the banana pudding and key lime pie you want. Just stop being negative and be positive, and you'll lose weight, according to these statistics. I don't know about you. I'm willing to try that. It decreases our immune system's ability to fight inflammation. It's a proven fact that people that are constantly negative get sick more than people that are positive. You sleep less because of that cortisol being in your body, and you are more restless. So my friends and my family of Fairlawn, I love you guys so much. May you come to see that God is here right now with us all the time. May you come to see that the ground you are standing on is holy. And may you properly represent that borrowed breath of God, because death and life are in the power of the tongue, in the power of the breath. Grace and peace. I love you.